Hello there, guys. Just a quick one. I noticed I have a couple of minutes before I get on to my next job. This one is regarding something I always hear people throwing around all the time. If you go to search, people talk about how we are enslaved in the modern times and stuff like that. But there are things which I've learned with time, which I think embracing them actually sets me free in a lot of aspects. First of all, let's talk about spiritual freedom. If you go to the old texts, I'm talking about the age before Christ. You hear stories of where gods used to come and punish people for not adhering to certain things, whatever. There was always that people used to call it intervention from the stars or from the skies or whatever. And that's why people always used to look up to the skies whenever they thought of God. Even today, they still do it. And one of the tribes that was enslaved, we read, for instance, when you come from the Abrahamic religions, we assume that those people were free society, but they were not. They were actually enslaved. The time of coming of Christ was actually the beginning of a new era, and it was now a matter of choice between following the truth and keeping the traditions of the society. And you realize most people at the end of the day opted to preserve their traditions and decided to ignore the truth. But in terms of spiritual freedom, you actually don't have to sacrifice to these gods anymore. You don't have to do any of these things which they demand. And that one even goes to the Christian religion, because most of the rules or what you call it, the commandments and stuff, they were based on the old doctrines of the Pharisees and the scribes. But it doesn't mean like you don't have to be a responsible human being. Of course, Christ gave us the autonomy to dictate our own or decide our own destiny. So you don't have to worship these gods. Life is not about a reward based on your conduct, whether you're good or bad. He just says it is what it is. If you plant seeds like maize or corn or whatever, you harvest what you plant. And this is what he says: that which is born of truth does not die. That which is born of a woman, I mean, that which is a product of ignorance, or that which is born of sex dies. And this is where you differentiate between the perishable and the imperishable. So he talks about the later, both actually. And this is where they say if you want to embrace your body, you lose the way of the spirit. So you'll always be a slave to your own cravings. But yeah, that's one part I would like to state. You don't see those gods coming back, bringing hailstorm and fires and all that. Those things don't really happen anymore because people have been set free spiritually, but they are still enslaved mentally and psychologically. And I'll give an example. Like back in Africa, where I came from, we had my ancestors talks about the time when they were occupied by the European colonies, and so there was this fight for independence, and people wanted back their lands and everything else, which they did. But even today, people mentally they are enslaved. It's not that they are they have guns in their heads or whatever, but still they're living as if they were still under the colonial times, and they keep going to seek these people to come and free them in things which they're supposed to have achieved freedom. But that's a different thing. Then we talk about nature, because life is actually divided into two. You have the manifest life, which is pretty much artificial. It's uh, it's uh, it's what would I call it? It's something that is transitory. It's not something that is permanent. And this is one thing people don't understand. You cannot find immortality in the manifest life, because this is something that is just for the evolution of the souls. Uh, so it's not something that is meant to exist here forever. So when you talk about the manifest life, it's actually artificially sustained. Like we have two lives. We have the animal life, which we have to sustain by eating, and to get our food we have to work and stuff like that. And then we also have the mystery, this has to do with the spirit. Most people tend to connect to the two, or they just try to combine the two, but they don't understand the difference. So when it comes to the manifest life, it's all about being practical. It's about survival. It's about trying to minimize human suffering. The greatest dilemma of every humans who come to this place is to choose between survival and between mystery or spiritual enlightenment and the body. The body is always focused on the outwards. It's always worried about death, you know, disappearance. Even though it's inevitable, death is inevitable, and this is when you realize a lot of effort that is put on preserving the body is actually useless. I mean, a lot of energy that goes towards creating a comfortable life. It doesn't. We don't actually need to do all that. Like now, if you look at the modern days, people are working at least about 40 hours just to pay for rent and to buy food and a lot of these attachments and all that. So, in that regard, there is a story that goes when man was cast into the world of animals, there was no food for the humans and all that. So. Wisdom descended, so she created this environment where people would never starve. The generations will always have plenty to feast on, whatever. But human ignorance and stupidity can create a tremendous suffering. And this is what you see with the destruction of the biosphere, because people want to accumulate more and more and more, which they actually do not need. So in this aspect is where people more or less we are the ones who are enslaving ourselves. It's not like there is an external conspiracy to enslave us, because you see, if you are to live within your means, you can actually create a lot of time for yourself, for seeking and stuff like that. You don't have to be working like uh, 80 hours in a week or whatever. But yeah, in that regard, uh, what we do, instead of looking at ourselves in the mirror, I mean, instead of internally reflecting ourselves and asking ourselves what is of value, we tend to project these outwards, and we tend to blame other people, and we'll blame the system and all that, and that thing can actually put you into a lot of stress, because instead of guiding you towards a solution, now you keep accumulating all these issues, which are pretty much mental and psychological. So in that regard, well, the world is way much easier to survive than it was like 100 years, but it's gonna get hard anyway, because now after we destroy the natural environment due to desertification and all this overpopulation and all that, which is actually as a result of human ignorance, because knowledge is there, wisdom is there, and everything is there, but people don't want to follow that. There's something I've been going through recently, a couple of years actually, in the recent years. It talks about that which guides a man is inside of man. So regardless of what texts say, uh, you're not tied to these external doctrines or external documents or whatever, because these ones can be altered, they can be corrupted, they can be misinterpreted, but they can guide you if you understand them. But what I'm trying to say is, if you're incapable of looking within yourself, but at least you have a good understanding of these, they can be of help. But the most important thing is, like, your destiny is not tied to another. When you're given a complete autonomy or free will to decide your own destiny, it's a matter of following that which is inside of you, instead of trying to look at other people and complaining and all that or whatever. So sinners basically punish themselves. When you do bad things, you're pretty much punishing yourself. It's more about understanding the law of cause and effect, understanding how the environment works, and you can position yourself uh, in such a way that you're not living a life of suffering. So there is the two cause of suffering. One is a human condition, being in the body. We are limited in terms of perception, but there is also the biggest cause of suffering is human ignorance, where people don't look at the wealth that is within, and they become beggars. And repentance is actually, you have to look within yourself to go back to the primordial self, to reconnect with your inner self, and through that is how you connect with your creator. But when you're ignorant of that and you think by worshiping another external being is going to do you favors or whatever, you always be a poor man. It's like a beggars who never focus on their how they can build their own skills. And this is in terms of practical world, and they keep waiting for someone to come and do stuff for them. So they'll always be beggars. They'll always be poor. So yeah, I mean, if you want to justify your life, if you want to justify your suffering, you keep justifying it, but it doesn't make it true. I think instead of feeling justified or thinking that you know too much, it's more about seeking for the truth, and that truth will set you free. And truth is very simple, it's nothing complicated. And first of all, like I said at the beginning, when it comes to spiritual freedom, it's actually entirely within you. Uh, it's first you find that, and then you reconnect with the creation. Because if you're a stranger to yourself, you'll be a stranger to everybody else, including the people around you. You start destroying things. So that's one part. The second, when it comes to survival, because it's all about being pragmatic, it's being practical. You don't go and pray for the food. Yeah, people traditionally they used to. It was the easiest way. You just go and sit under the tree or pray under the tree and expect the food to come. This one is your responsibility. Go find work, and then whatever you earn, just focus on what is important in your life. You don't have to be doing things to impress anybody. You just have to focus on sustaining your body and your health, which is your own responsibility. And then once you're done with that, then the rest becomes much simpler. So I would like to end this one. I don't want to make long videos, which are confusing. But like I always say, if you go through my videos and you want to reach out, just drop me a message and subscribe, and yeah, we can always engage with each other. Ciao.